Coming to you not live from a suburb that is probably pretty far, this is the Movie Nerd Podcast, the show where myself, Dominic Rizzi, aka the Movie Nerd, and my co-host, Christian Evanko, will continue to talk about movies, TV, and just life in general. And now, here are the hosts, myself, Dominic Rizzi, and Christian Evanko. This is the Movie Nerd Podcast. Chris, how you doing, man?
Good, dude. How are you?
I'm pretty good. We're recording this on New Year's Eve, and it's we got a big new year to look forward to. I'm really looking forward to leaving this year behind, and we're here to talk about some awards movies. Awards are usually a big part of movie season. Usually when you get to the last half of the year, more specifically the last about 2 months of the year, we get into these big awards movies. These movies that seem to be made a certain way. Movies that seem to be embodying specific tones. Usually it's a time we get the best movies of the year, but some of them, they just seem to cater towards these award ceremonies. I'm not really sure why, because at least in my opinion, I feel like the award ceremonies have been extremely outdated in terms of the types of films that are nominated and also who just wins out of all the nominations. But we'll get into my specific nitty-gritties later. So Chris, what are your views really on award ceremonies and how they work?
I definitely, most of the times I don't watch them out of the fact that I think that it is a cash grab. I think that the movie that pays for the most advertising is usually the movie that wins.
Damn
AKA
straight.
The Revenant.
Yep.
So I really just don't think that's where you find the real talent. And it just feels like a exclusive club that you have to pay to get into.
Exactly.
So that's pretty much it. But granted, there are a lot of good movies that come out around this time of the year.
That is true.
So I am going to look forward to watching them this time around for the sake of giving those movies that maybe didn't have the budget but deserved it a chance.
Right, and the thing that I'm actually impressed with the most about this award season is that I felt that this year overall had just such a lackluster of awards. Not a lackluster of awards. It had such a lackluster of great movies that honestly, the smaller movies, the ones that usually wouldn't have get nominated, are getting a lot of appeal. And that actually really, really amazes me. Amazing, incredible movies like Moonlight, like Nocturnal Animals, like Manchester by the Sea, like Jackie. These movies that any other year probably would not be getting a lot of appeal, but because it's a year where all the big budget movies are just so terrible, they have to look at these smaller movies and consider them, and especially in a year where the smaller movies really did save the year, like Sing Street. Sing Street is one of my favorite movies of the year. But the problem
the movie with the soundtrack you were showing?
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
it's a
really
very small Irish film directed by John Carney, the director of Once and Begin Again, and it's about this Irish kid who moves to a new school, who is completely out of his element, who sees this girl standing across the street and wants to impress her, so he forms a band. It's a great coming of age story. It's just a great feel good film. The music is incredible.
Yeah,
it's some
I was
of the
gonna
best
say the
music.
soundtrack blew me away.
It
felt as if a band was just putting out their first album. There was just so much passion in it. And you could tell that they really wanted it to resonate with the viewers.
It felt as if it felt like art. It felt like true art in the sense of they're young artists and they're trying to find who they are as people, and it just gave me such a sense of joy. This film was a small film. In any other year,
Define small film for our viewers out there.
It's small in terms of it didn't get a wide release. I don't think any of the big theaters around us were playing it, and it played at a few film festivals, but overall, just not a lot of people saw it. And it's on Netflix now. If you get a chance,
I did see that.
If you have a chance and you have a Netflix account, watch this movie because you will not regret it. It is one of my favorite movies of the year. It's such
how does a movie like this go to pick up steam then?
The problem is its budget, because the reason why many of these.
Real quick, because you said this movie is nominated for the Oscars.
Not just Oscars. Oscar nominations haven't gotten announced yet. But
okay.
It got a Critics' Choice Award for Best Original Song, and it got a Golden Globe nomination for Best Musical or Comedy, which I think is huge, considering the fact that if this were any other year, it would not have gotten any of those nominations. And now I don't think, unfortunately, when it comes to Oscars, I don't think it'll get a Best Picture nod, which sucks because I would love to, but I could definitely see it get one of those 7 songs getting Best Original Song.
That'd be awesome.
Potentially winning.
Those
because
really
let me tell you something. My 2 favorites from the movie are Up and Drive It Like You Stole It. And Drive It Like You Stole It, I think it could potentially win the year. If it wasn't going up against Moana, which those songs are going to get a bunch of nominations.
Well, that's
the animated one. But Lin-Manuel Miranda is doing.
The guy
who did Hamilton.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's killer though.
He really is. But like I said, and also La La Land, which is a movie that I didn't like as much as a lot of other people did, and I'll get into my reasons. Get into my reasons for why. But just, Sing Street is a movie that I loved so much, and I don't usually watch small films, but because this year was just so disappointing with all the blockbusters that I saw, I needed something refreshing like this, and it really it touched me in just so many different ways, in the sense of I felt like I could be in that kid's shoes just as easily. And also bringing the 80s feel to it, setting it in 1985, I think was a great creative choice. I think that it really helped to embody, it was a great throwback to the musical hits at the time, but at the same time, it didn't get stuck in the past. He wasn't trying to make it like a love letter. He was trying to focus it chiefly on a coming of age story. And also the fact that he got a mostly unknown cast. There were only 2 actors in that movie that I know. You got Jack Rayner from Transformers Age of Extinction, who sucks in Transformers, but then again, it's kind of hard to be in a Transformers movie and not suck. He was easily the best part about it, because he was this kid, the main kid's older brother, and every time he was on screen, he stole the scene. He was just so incredible. And also Aidan Gillen, better known as Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, was also in it. He plays the kid. Yeah, he plays the kid's dad. But that's it. Those are the only 2 actors that I recognize. But just the fact that it's an unknown cast, I don't know who any of these kids are, and I fell in love with each and every single one of these guys. And the main kid, Ferdio Walsh Pilo, I want to follow his acting career and his singing career, because, oh my god, it was so good. I loved Sing Street. As of right now, I ranked it number 6 only because there were just some
6 on what list?
6 on my top 10 of all time. Not all time. This year.
Okay.
This year.
Cool.
But when I'm making, once 2019 turns in about 3 years, once we're on New Year's Eve of 2019 becoming 2020, and I have to make my top 10 favorite films of the decade, I wouldn't be surprised if I put this film on the list. Nice. I really would not be surprised.
So basically, if you're out there and you are listening this far into the podcast, which we hope you are, check out Sing Street.
Yeah, it's on Netflix, and it is, you will not regret it. If you are a lover, not just a lover of film, but if you just love great stories with relatable characters, great music, and just a feel-good movie. That's another thing, is that too many of the films that we get, especially around award season, are so friggin' depressing. Like, it's almost like a requirement that to be considered for an awards, you have to be just so gut-wrenchingly depressing in some way. And I found that's the case with a lot of the other films. But this film, it will make you feel good. You will come out of this film pumping your fist in the air with excitement and joy.
Let me just say one thing. While all these movies try not to be generic because they want to be that sort of standout artistic piece that gets the nod or the nomination, I think that the problem is that all of these directors that release films around this time of the year are trying to get their foot in the door with the Oscars or the Golden Globes, and so they make these movies that they think are artistic, but really each year you're getting the same sad, depressing movie. It's just a different spin on it. So honestly, I think that's kind of my gripe with the award ceremonies. But like we just said, you do get some great movies like Sing Street, which you hopefully can see maybe change the tide of things going forward.
Exactly. But, I really hope it does. Like, this is a movie that I think a lot of people are going to watch. They're gonna hear about it from their friends, and then they're gonna watch it, and then they're gonna recommend to their friends, and then slowly but surely this film will gain up momentum. I can see this film having like a massive cult status, like on the level of any of the other major cult movies that have come out.
Like Donnie Darko?
Like Donnie Darko. Another great, underrated film that has this massive cult status. We should do, absolutely.
I really like that movie.
I can talk for ages about that
I didn't know you've seen it. Cool.
Oh, yeah.
So, question. Is there any other, because I know Netflix just put a lot of new content up this week. Are there any other movies that pertain to these award ceremonies that were uploaded?
Not from this year, no. But I do know that in terms of blockbusters, Captain America Civil War was also just uploaded onto Netflix.
That's why I wanted to ask you. My next thing is, I feel like while there were a lot of sort of lackluster blockbusters this year, we did get Deadpool. We did get Civil War. I liked Doctor Strange. Shoot me in the foot right now, but I thought Suicide Squad was a good movie. I loved Margot Robbie's performance. Will Smith, for the first time in years, resonated with me playing a character. And, Jurassic World came out. That kind of sucks.
Jurassic World was last year, not this
last year.
Jurassic World was last year, yeah.
Still sucks.
In my mind, here are the only good blockbusters to me that came out this year. Blockbuster films, mind you. Rogue One
was great.
Deadpool.
Episode on that. You can check
Civil
that out.
War, Zootopia,
was phenomenal.
and The Jungle Book. And
Moana.
Moana.
Book,
And
but
Moana.
they just added Jungle Book to Netflix, actually.
You're right.
So you
Jungle
guys
Book is
can
on
go check
Netflix
that
as
out
well.
there.
In my mind, though, and Moana. Moana, I really, really enjoyed.
Is Moana on Netflix?
Moana's not on Netflix,
Okay,
no,
that's
but
more
that's still
recent.
playing in certain theaters. So
Right,
those
right.
are, to me, the only actual good blockbusters that I was able to enjoy, and then just
Well,
the
that's
rest
a
of
solid
them.
list right there.
It is a solid list, but at the same time, when you consider just the amount of good blockbusters we got last year, and even the year before, 2014, in my opinion, was the year for blockbusters because you got three great superhero movies with Civil War and X-Men, not Civil War, Winter Soldier. I always get those two confused. Captain America, Winter Soldier, X-Men Days of Future Past, and Guardians of the Galaxy. Three of my favorite superhero movies of all time, hands down. Not to mention you also got Interstellar. You got Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. You got 22 Jump Street, which I loved. You got Godzilla, which I really, really enjoyed. How to Train Your Dragon 2. The Lego Movie, which was one of the not just one of the best animated movies, but one of the best comedies I've seen in a while. So when you just take those past 2 years into consideration with the amount of blockbusters this year, and when you only get 5 to 6 good blockbusters, it's disappointing to me. It really, really is. So that's ultimately what I mean when I say 2016 was a disappointing year for blockbusters.
Were there any non-franchise big blockbusters that maybe let you down? Maybe there's some that I liked.
No, honestly, even the ones that weren't a part of a franchise, like you did get the occasional original one like Central Intelligence. That was probably it though, because I saw The Secret Life of Pets, an original animated movie, and I hated it. I really,
Hey,
really
what about
did.
Sausage Party? I thought that was pretty
Sausage
funny.
Party was good, but I had problems with that because for a
I
movie,
enjoyed it. It was
for
a
a movie
refreshing
that was
take.
for a movie that was supposed to be an animated original take, like that was supposed to be an animated movie that was really going for adults. It really repeated a lot of the same comedy that I've seen before. It's a lot of unnecessary cursing. It's a lot of dumb sex jokes. And by the time they actually hit on something like provoking, like race or religion or something like that, it was only like for a couple minutes, and then they just went right back to the dumb jokes.
I was gonna say though, I liked how they were able to get there with the whole race religion jokes.
Right.
Just using food in a supermarket.
Right, exactly.
But I did want to ask you this. Although I didn't see the movie, I do love the score. I have listened to the score many times, and I heard great things about it. You didn't mention Kubo and the two
Kubo and the two strings. Oh my God, how could I forget about that? Here's the reason why I don't mention
So
that.
I feel like your list of blockbusters, you're not.
Well,
you're
here's the
missing
thing. Here's the thing. When it comes to animation, it really, really depends between the verge of blockbuster or not, because animation is a very, very specific type of a genre. My reasoning for why Kubo and the Two Strings, which is in my top 15 of the year, by the way,
and that's a blockbuster. You would
it's
say
not a blockbuster per se, because the problem is that even though it's animation and it did get that wide release, it had a lot of adult themes in it for a kids movie, because that's just the way that Leica Animation, that studio, focuses. But the problem is that I just felt like not a lot of people saw it. And to me, in order for it to be qualified as this massive summer blockbuster, you need a certain amount of viewers, because that's ultimately what makes a blockbuster. And Kubo, by the time it came out, it was the end of the summer. I loved the hell out of it. I really gotta say, that last week of summer, because I was gone for like the entire month of August and I missed a lot of movies. So that last week of August, when I got back from vacation, it was really catch-up week for me. And I saw 3 movies that ultimately really did save the summer for me, because this summer was one of the most disappointing summers I've ever had. With Sausage Party, which, like I said, I was able to get some enjoyment from. I got some laughs out of it, even though it just did nothing new for me. I saw War Dogs, which is in my top 10 right now for the year, and I saw Kubo and the Two Strings. And honestly, those 3 movies, all of my top 10 of the summer, those saved the summer for me, because this summer was just so disappointing.
Just to hit on Sausage Party real quick, I think that the performances, as far as voice acting, was phenomenal.
All right.
I thought everyone gave it their all. I thought the animation, we've seen animation before, but I thought what they were able to do with I personally thought the jokes hit a little bit harder to me, and I liked the story, and at first I was like, is this movie going anywhere? Then by the end it got just ridiculously crazy, but they did conclude the story. I thought it was a pleasant film. I don't think it's gonna be a groundbreaking landmark animation movie,
right?
Like I think Zootopia might be.
Right, Zootopia.
That movie might be my #1 movie of the year.
Oh wow!
To be honest with you, it was incredible. It blew me away. But I will say that I did enjoy Sausage Party.
I'll give you Zootopia, because Zootopia was an absolute great one, and I'm honestly, it's going to come down to between Zootopia and Moana for the Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature, bringing it back to the Oscars.
Hey, we'll see if you're right.
Bringing it back to the Oscars. So right now, so I figure what we'll do for this segment is I'm going to read off all of the nominees for the Golden Globes. This is certain amount of categories.
When are the Golden Globes?
So the Golden Globes are going to be this coming Sunday, January 8th. They're playing on NBC at, I believe, 8 o'clock on Eastern Time, so whatever that is for Western.
Double check. ABC.com. We told you where to go to find it.
Exactly.
So,
all right, so
cool.
Here are all the nominees. So the thing about the Golden Globes that I personally appreciate, even though I know a lot of other people don't, and the reason why they matter a little bit more to me than, say, the Critics' Choice Awards and the SAG Awards, is they're able to stand on their own in terms of the fact that they hit both film and television. Because we already got the Emmys, but the Emmys are really weird because they cover television seasons, not entire years. So rather than covering like the entire year of 2016, the last Emmy Awards ceremony, which already happened, covered all the TV series that ran from, I believe it was June of 2015 until the end of May for 2016. So right now we're in the middle of an Emmy season, so we don't have to worry about the Emmys for right now. So the Golden Globe nominees, concerning film, so the nominees for Best Drama for film were Hacksaw Ridge, which I loved, Hell or High Water, an independent movie, which I loved, and that's another one that we'll get into. I'm really, really glad that it got nominated.
Okay.
Lion, which I have not seen, but I've heard good things about. Manchester by the Sea, which I am definitively saying this now. Call me out on it later for being a future teller. Casey Affleck is winning an Oscar for this movie, hands down. And
we're holding you to that.
Yeah, please hold me to it. Please,
the future teller.
Please hold me to it. And Moonlight, which
I heard that one was phenomenal.
So those are the 5 nominees for
I heard the premise
Best
of
Drama.
Moonlight, and I gotta say it sounds really appealing.
God,
and it just seems like a refreshing take on a movie of that sort of genre.
This movie was a movie that I saw the trailer for, and the trailer was so intriguing that I just didn't know what to make of it. And then when I saw it, first off, this is a first-time filmmaker. This guy, Barry Jenkins, he wrote this film with his friend Terrell McCraney. I think it was based off like a poem.
Is this considered an indie film?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good
It was
for
only
him.
it was only playing
That's
in
what I
select
like to
theater.
see. That's
It was
awesome.
only playing
Good
in
for
select
him.
theaters, and he directed this entire film. This film is such an intriguing tale because it follows the story of this, I don't even know, like a kid, a guy, something. It follows this man. His name is Chiron. He's a black man living in Florida around they don't specify what time period it is, but it's around like when the drug trade is really going down in Miami. And it's so creative because it follows
70s, 80s?
Yeah,
or
just
60s
about.
around there?
It follows 3 distinct time periods of his life. So he's played by 3 different actors, this character of Chiron. It follows him when he's
cool.
It follows him when he's a little kid.
Now, do they look similar throughout each?
They do the best they can, but for the most part,
gotcha.
most part. So when he's
It's an indie film,
so in the beginning, he's a little kid. He's played by Alex R. Hibbert, who's a newcomer. Then in the middle, he's a teenager. He's played by Ashton Sanders, and then at the end, he's an adult, portrayed by Trevante Rhodes. And it's just him going throughout his life, trying to figure out his sexuality because he is gay and he's coming into his own terms. And it's just him having to deal with his best friend Kevin, his mentor Juan, who's played by Mahershala Ali, who's been having a killer year in terms of his portrayals in Luke Cage, House of Cards.
Who was he on Luke Cage?
He was Cottonmouth on Luke Cage, the bad guy.
I forgot he was in House of Cards.
Mahershala has been having a killer year so far, and his interaction with his mother, who Naomi Harris gives a haunting performance as his mother, this drug-addicted mother who just does not care about her son at all. And it's a human story. It's a coming-of-age story, but at the same time, it's serious and heartwarming at the same time. Does that make sense? Whereas, like, it's not depressing, like, utterly gut-wrenchingly depressing like some of these other Oscar films that come out.
Is it just realistic?
That's what I would say more so than anything else. It's realistic. And the fact that it's a first-time filmmaker, and he was able to, the film to me was art. Like I said, Sing Street was art. This is another film. It was just so beautifully shot, beautifully edited. The way that he uses the light, the entire film has a backdrop of blue to it, and you wouldn't think that would work for it, but just every time you see it, like whenever it's dark, it's blue light. Like whenever there's a lot of scenes where he's standing at a beach, because that's supposed to be a metaphor of the beach is really the only place where he's ever truly able to find peace within himself. The beach, exactly. Okay. And every time it's always this beautiful shot of blue moonlight in the background, and it's gorgeous.
So cinematography.
I want this film to be nominated for cinematography, like more so than anything else. Cool. Like this film, like I said, is.
I'm just here to help you get there.
Yeah, this film is probably the prime example of a movie that any other year this would not be being considered at all. But because it's the year of 2016, it's gonna get a lot. My predictions for this film, Oscar-wise, are this film is gonna get Best Picture. This film is gonna get Best Director for Barry Jenkins. This film is gonna get
Are you talking about nods or actual winning?
Nominations right now. This is only nominations. So in terms of the cast, the problem is that because it's an ensemble cast and because there's one main character, but there's different actors that play him, they're all considered supporting. So I think that Mahershala Ali for this film is going to get supporting, may potentially win, I'm not sure. Naomi Harris is absolutely going to get nominated for Best Supporting Actress. And then For screenplay, I thought that this film was going to get the original screenplay nomination, but
Define
I found
screenplay.
out.
What do you mean by a screenplay?
It's just the writing of the film. Whoever wrote the film, and it's who gets a nomination. And there's certain criteria for what's determined to be an original versus an adapted screenplay. Because let's face it, there's very, very few original ideas in Hollywood.
Well, adapted as a Star Wars story.
The way that they've classified it, the way that they've classified it is that an adapted screenplay is any screenplay that is based off of a previous published work, say like a book or a poem or a play, or if it's a sequel. That, at least to me, is what is classified as an adapted feature. But if it's anything else, it's original. So I thought that Moonlight was going to get original, but apparently I found out that because Barry Jenkins and his co-writer Terrell McCraney ended up adapting it from a poem, I forgot the exact name of a poem that it was written, that technically classifies it for the adapted.
For Moonlight?
For Moonlight, exactly.
Right, because they have to give credit where credit's due.
Exactly.
Now let me ask you a quick question, because you said something that was interesting to me, and I want to try to understand if the reason why you said this is more so political, or based on the political landscape that we're having change right now, or if it's because of the lack of big blockbusters that are now affecting these smaller films being taken in a more serious light as these award shows come up. And my question to you for that is, why did you say that any other year a movie like Moonlight may not have received the sort of attention it's been getting?
Because I just found that when it comes to these award ceremonies, they consider a very specific type of a film that usually, and ultimately, I gotta bring this in because it is a factor, does not consider race. It ultimately does not, they don't consider race at all, and they ultimately, it affects the types of films that are nominated, because at least in the previous couple years, the only film that has been nominated, in my opinion, that has been primarily consisting of black people is 12 Years a Slave.
Okay.
Well, not just that. Sorry, I screwed up there. It's two movies. It's 12 Years a Slave and it's Django Unchained. Two films that are primarily about slavery.
What year was Django again?
Django was 2012, and then 12 Years a Slave was the year after in 2013. And that's fine because those two films are some of the best films of the decade. But why does a black person, why does a primarily black movie have to be nominated for an award ceremony have to be about slavery? It could be about anything else. There's so many different things. Like,
so you're just kind of sick of the same.
Yeah, for example, last year, Straight Outta Compton, one of my favorite films of last year, the origin story of NWA, the ultimately first major rap group, that gets relegated to a Best Original Screenplay nomination? Which, first of all the writers for that movie were white, which, that movie should have gotten so many more nominations than it did. It was snubbed for Best Picture. It was snubbed for Best Supporting Actor. Every one of those guys was incredible, but I personally would have nominated Jason Mitchell for his portrayal of Eazy-E. And just, it makes me so happy to see a movie like Moonlight finally getting the respect that it deserves, because it doesn't just feel like a lot of nominations for it feels like finally the genre is getting nominated outside of the previous. It just felt so political, and this is the first year where I feel like a film is finally being nominated for being a great film rather than just buying out a whole lot of award space.
And if I may, real quick, that what you just said it perfectly sums up one of the main points and my reasons why I've tuned out of watching these award shows.
Right.
Now,
it feels so political.
Now I will start to give more attention because, like we said, there are great movies like Moonlight, Sing Street, and other films that have come out.
Right, that we're gonna get into. That we're gonna get into in a little bit.
That are finally getting the light of day. So maybe they'll attract me back as a viewer. But yeah, those reasons, you sort of hit the nail on the head there. I'm just sick of seeing the same thing done by a different person, regardless of race, color, theme, cinematography. I'm just there's so many movies coming out each year. I'm just that was well said.
Actually, just to hop off your point, I don't know if you heard earlier in the year, but there was supposed to be another black movie. I hate using that term, but I just can't think of any other term to classify it. Black movie that's primarily it's made by a black person. It primarily stars black people. But it was another slave movie. It was Nate Parker's directorial debut, The Birth of a Nation, which was
the Netflix movie.
No, that's not a Netflix movie.
Oh, okay.
No, it shares the same name as the first ever feature-length film.
Scandal?
Yes, it was.
Right.
But it was the story of Nat Turner's slave rebellion, and that starred Nate Parker in the title role. And that film was supposed to be the film that Fox Searchlight was marketing as their big Oscar winner, and that was supposed to be getting all the awards.
What company?
Fox Searchlight is the one that was marketing it out.
Okay.
It's a subsection of Fox that covers all the Oscar films.
Okay.
So the big ones are usually Fox Searchlight, Sony Picture Classics, and the most recent one is A24, which is the studio that just did Moonlight. But but then you had that nasty rape scandal, which is the subject. If you haven't heard about this already, basically, When Nate was doing promotional material for his film that he wrote, directed, and starred in, The Birth of a Nation, there was some allegations that were brought up against him about a potential rape scandal back in 1999 when he was in college. Apparently, him and the co-writer of the film assaulted and raped a fellow student who then committed suicide. And Parker went to vehemently deny it, and I was able to watch the film, and because I'm one of those people who's able to separate art from artist, but at the same time, it's like studios don't want to be anywhere near that. They don't want any sort of a scandal touching their films. So the film was, I saw the film, it was okay. It wasn't anything special to write home about. Like in terms of slave movies, it didn't give anything new to me, because I saw 12 Years a Slave, and 12 Years a Slave was a beautiful, 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 heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching, depressing film. But it's like, do we really need any more slave movies? We've seen that. Let's get something new. And that's why, another one of the reasons why I appreciate that Moonlight is getting all the nods that it did. Because
right, I was going to ask you, was your reason in bringing up Birth of a Nation because while it was nominated before, or while we thought it was going to be nominated before the scandal, you were just sick that the fact that it was just another slave.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we've gotten that already, and it would have just been a repeat of everything that happened. And it's like, okay, I get it. We got a slave movie. Let's move on from that. Let's get something new. And Moonlight was something new. And the fact that it is getting all these awards nominations, and it most likely will get all these awards nominations for come the Oscars, which are still about 2 months away. It just makes me so happy.
Cool, and we'll do, I think it'd be great if you and I did a little episode the week before the Oscars.
Yep, absolutely. That's a good idea.
We'll hang
That's
out
a
and
good
watch
idea.
some movies,
Absolutely.
get prepared.
Yep, so moving on.
Bring us, sorry.
Yeah, so
bring
back
us
to the
into
Golden
next
Globe. Yeah,
segment.
we got into it. So I'm going to skip the comedy genre for now, because I want to get into the acting and get into some of the specific performances. But we'll hit the comedy later, because there are some things that got nominated for comedy this year for the Golden Globes that I'm really, really happy got nominated.
Okay.
So first off, we got the nominees for Best Actor in a Drama, which, like I said, they usually do a pretty good mix in terms of how the Golden Globe nominees get pushed for the Oscars. For the most part, it's usually, though, 4 people that got nominated for the drama, and then like 1 or 2 for comedy, at least for how Golden Globes translates into Oscars. So here are the nominees for Best Actor in a Drama that got nominated. So you got Casey Affleck for Manchester by the Sea. You got Joel Edgerton for Loving. You got Andrew Garfield for Hacksaw Ridge. You got Viggo Mortensen for Captain Fantastic, and you got Denzel Washington for Fences. Those are the 5 nominees they picked. Now, my predictions are, like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a mix, but for the most part, like I said, Casey Affleck for Manchester by the Sea. That's really the next film that I want to hit, is Manchester by the Sea, because this film is another film that, this one was a little bit less artistic and more so Oscar baity, but not 100%, because in terms of the subject material that it covers and just the type of performance that they were able to get. So Kenneth Lonergan writes and directs this film, and it's about this janitor who lives in Boston. His name is Lee Chandler. That's Casey Affleck's character. I don't know if you know who Casey Affleck is. That's Ben Affleck's younger brother.
Okay, I kind of figured.
Yeah,
I just wasn't sure,
for anybody who doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And basically, he's just this janitor, and he's living this pretty low down life in Boston, and he's just going, throughout the days, and he gets a call on the phone that his brother, who's played by Kyle Chandler, ironically enough, from Friday Night Lights, has just had a massive heart attack. And so he drives from Boston to his hometown of Manchester by the Sea to see how his brother's doing. The only problem is when he gets there, his brother's tragically passed away. And so he ends up finding out from the will that his brother left behind that he's actually in charge of being the guardian of his nephew, his brother's son, who is, his name is Patrick, and he's played by another new coming actor, Lucas Hedges. And just the way that the story explores this guy Lee, and ultimately the massive tragedy that has struck him, because this guy, I won't spoil it for you because you haven't seen it, but there is just this massive tragedy that this character has undergone, this tragedy that has happened to him, and just the way that he has to deal with it, and the way that he deals with it throughout the film, and the way that affects his relationship with his nephew, with his wife who left him years ago, with his brother's who's left of his family, and and just how it affects him. And Affleck is able to give such a layered performance. It's the best I've ever seen from him. I've been saying for the longest time that Casey Affleck is a much better actor than Ben Affleck, but just it was a different level of acting altogether. The way that he was able to make his performance as great as it was, while at the same time never losing track. He was so damn subtle throughout it. And even when the tragedy happened, he was still able to show just how wrecked of a character he was without really ever breaking face. So, but then there's this kid, Lucas Hedges, who has been in like one other thing, but for the most part is a pretty newcomer. He was fantastic. I think the kid's like 19. I think he's my age, but he played a 15-year-old in the film, and he was absolutely incredible. The relationship with Affleck, I believe that they were uncle and nephew. They had their chemistry back and forth was great. Whenever they were yelling at each other, whenever they were having conversations back and forth, it was absolutely incredible. I could see this kid, Lucas Hedges, getting nominated for supporting actor for film because he's gotten a Critics' Choice Award and a SAG Award, but he didn't get a Golden Globe nod for supporting. But he was incredible. And Michelle Williams, who plays Affleck's wife, pretty small role. She's only a supporting role, but she was incredible. Incredible. So, this is, like I said, it's all these reasons why I think, and like I said, hold me to this, because look, I called DiCaprio winning for Revenant last year.
Okay.
So
let the record show.
Yeah, let the record show when it comes to actors, not necessarily be nominated, but winning for Best Actor, I say Casey Affleck's got it in the bag.
All right. Well, hey, we'll find out in about 2 months' time if you're right or not.
Yeah.
So, Dom, segue us into the next segment of this episode of the podcast.
All right. So, continuing on with the nominations. So, you've got Best Actress in a Drama, Best Actress in a Comedy. A lot of nominees. I'm trying to think of one that would really be able to segment us into another film. Oh, well, actually, you know what? We can still stay on this topic. So going into the other nominees, like I said, Joel Edgerton for Loving, Andrew Garfield for Hacksaw Ridge, Viggo Mortensen for Captain Fantastic, and Denzel Washington for Fences. There are 2 films on there that I really want to talk about that I think are also going to get a lot of Oscar nominations. That's Hacksaw Ridge and Fences. So first going into Hacksaw Ridge, did you see it?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Hacksaw Ridge is a World War II film directed by Mel Gibson, and it follows the story of Desmond T. Doss, who's portrayed by Andrew Garfield, previously from the Amazing Spider-Man films. And basically, he was a medic who fought in the Japanese side of World War II, but his thing was that he refused to pick up a rifle. And he would not, and he was mocked and berated and told to leave the army, but he would not. He was strictly vehement in his beliefs. And next thing you know, it was the Battle of Hacksaw Ridge in Japan, where he ended up saving close to 200 lives without ever firing a single weapon. So Mel Gibson directs this movie.
This is historically accurate?
This is historically accurate. This is based on a true story. So Mel Gibson directs this film, and I assume, well, look, we all know what Mel Gibson is like as a guy. We know what he's like personally. Mel Gibson is a great director. Braveheart is one of the best films I've ever seen, like from a filmmaker standpoint.
Regardless of what you say about the man, he knows what
he's doing when it comes to film. And
I agree.
And it's not just that, it's the action. Because for me, the action is what saved this movie. Because the problem is that the first half of this movie, when it's showing his origin story and like the town that he lived in, and like then when he leaves and he goes to boot camp.
Is it just not compelling enough?
It's not that it's not compelling. It's the fact of the way that he presents it. It could almost feel comical and not comical, but almost like a farce. You know, because he's like,
okay.
I'm that...
So a bit fiction?
Almost, it's like, I'm that poor southern boy who has to strictly maintain his beliefs. And it could feel very fictional-esque in that sense. And then once he gets to the boot camp, in my opinion, straight up ripping off Full Metal Jacket. Straight up ripping off Full Metal Jacket at some point.
I can see how you can run into problems with that. By the way, Full Metal Jacket,
phenomenal film. If you're a lover of film, watch like Stanley Kubrick's entire
especially
filmography.
War films, which seems to be this little segment right here.
Right.
So yeah, definitely check it out.
But just, I had a lot of problems with it. Mm-hmm. But then he actually gets shipped out to action. And then he goes to Japan. And the action starts. And first off, the way that they kick off the action is absolutely mind-boggling. But once the action starts, you are in it. And honestly, the action saves it. The action saves this movie. Because this movie, Mel Gibson, above all else, knows how to direct action. And the action in this film... it's a little bit gorier than Saving Private Ryan, because I know everyone says that first couple minutes of Saving Private Ryan where they're going up the beach and they're just gonna, and the veterans have said that it's the most realistic depiction. I'm not gonna say that this was as realistic as that, but it was certainly bloodier, and you certainly felt like the hell that these guys were in, because like you see guys getting shot back and forth left and right, and he's just running throughout the battlefield trying to save as many people as he can with no gun on him. He's got not a single gun, not a single bullet, and it's astounding. It really, really is.
Quick question to you, because at this point in the history of modern film, we have gotten many war movies.
A lot. We got a lot of war movies.
And there's some great classics up there. Platoon,
Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan.
We Were Soldiers, also starring Mel Gibson.
So let me ask you, where do you see this movie fitting into the whole sort of like realistic, historically based film genre? Do you think
Here's
it's worth
what-
its salt in a few years, or do you think it's more so as just an interesting film to come out this year?
Here's what I'll say. I will definitely say this was an interesting film to come out this year. I think that it is an extremely well-made film. I think that in terms of holding up, just compared to the overall canon of war films that have come out, this might not be the first one that people will think of.
Right.
Mostly because just the action, it's so gory. Like, it's almost to the point where, like, Mel Gibson was trying to make it as gory as possible for the sake of being gory. It doesn't reach that point.
Just because he can do it successfully.
Just because he can do it successfully, exactly. It doesn't ever really reach that point, but it gets very, very close. Versus Saving Private Ryan, I always
So being
compare
an
this to
avid
Saving...
moviegoer like yourself, I'm sure you've seen many cringeworthy moments and are partially have become numb to some of them.
Yep.
Would you say that this kind of broke that barrier for you?
Little bit. It depends.
Okay.
Because like I said,
Okay.
when that action starts, the
little bit of a gut twister?
Yeah. I'm not gonna like spoil what happens for all the people
Right.
that haven't
Yeah,
seen the movie.
that's cool.
But when
We
that,
appreciate that.
when that action starts, just oh my god.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. Exactly. Like
Strap
hold in
in,
your
all those
innards.
cliches.
Oh, absolutely. Because like once it starts, it all goes to it. Oh my god, it's incredible. It's so well shot, it's so well acted. And here's what I'll say about Andrew Garfield's performance. I've heard that because he's in 2. Andrew Garfield's another guy that's having an incredible year. Like after leaving
say
Spider-Man,
this real quick, then jump on to the other movie in this category.
after leaving Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield just was in a little bit of a rut. But this year, between this movie and he's also going to be the star in Martin Scorsese's next movie, Silence, which I still have yet to see.
But we can be expecting a review
We can
for
be
that
expecting,
when it comes
yeah,
out.
we can definitely
Okay,
be expecting a
sounds
review
good.
for that when it comes out. Just he manages to take this character, this simple Southern guy who has this strict belief. Like I said, could have been a farce, but he carries that performance throughout the entire thing, and he really makes it his own. And honestly, if it weren't for Silence, I would say that this is the film that gets him his Oscar nomination this year. But because he's going to be in Silence, and because it's Scorsese, and because of how powerful I heard that film is, and because it's Scorsese, and he carries just a little bit more weight, I could definitely see it. But I could see this film, Hacksaw Ridge, getting a Best Picture nomination.
Okay.
Absolutely. And definitely some visual effects Oscars, and like for like makeup and wardrobe and all that stuff, because... Oh, man.
So it's a good period piece.
Very good period piece. No, not period piece. I don't think of war films as period pieces, but
Okay.
it's certainly a great war
Historically
film.
accurate.
Yeah,
whatnot.
very, yeah.
All right. So you said there was another movie in this category. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, so the other one is Fences. And now, Fences is a film that I just saw the other night, and it's based off of a very popular play that's won a bunch of Tony Awards. It's written by August Wilson, and the play and the films both star Denzel Washington and Viola Davis. Here's what I'll say about this film, is that when it comes to adapting plays to film, like, obviously there's a very big difference between the two, because plays, it's on stage, it's real people, there's certain things they have to do there, versus on film, you have the, advantages of camera angles to help tell your story. Not all of it has to be just nonstop talking. You can rely on, like, visuals and action to tell your story more so than dialogue. Versus plays, you don't really have that much to do, so you have to rely on things like dialogue and song and dance number. Now, here's what I'll say about this film, is that I didn't have as many gripes with this film as I did with La La Land. But that being said, this film is very, very reminiscent of the play that it's based on. Very, very reminiscent.
Is that a bad thing to you?
In this case, no. Because I'm actually surprised. Because for any other film, I would say yes. Because like I said, in my opinion, there's just certain specific things that plays have to do in terms of the nonstop, quick banter that films do not have to do. But I'm just really surprised because this film, it looked like a play. Not a very big set. Lots and lots of dialogue. Like, I think there were maybe 3 scenes in this film where there was no dialogue, and just the rest of it was all dialogue. And for the most part, any other film, that wouldn't work, because there's only a certain amount of talking that you hear in this film before you finally say, okay, get to the action. Because I want to see it action, because I came to see a movie. I came to see not just people talking, I came to see action. But the way that this film is able to incorporate the dialogue into the story, because the way that it functions as the play functions, it's a series of stories being told by these people, and just with these people talking, it's them, revealing the story of themselves and revealing the story of everything else. So the play / film follows Denzel Washington's character. His name is Troy Maxson. In the late 50s, early 60s, he's a garbage collector, and he was formerly a baseball player. The problem was that he didn't make any of the major leagues. It was because of his age, because he was a little bit older when he was trying out, but he blames it on race because of the time that they're living in. Okay. And so it just focuses on how he's got a lot of inner demons and a lot of chips on his shoulder, and it just focuses on how this affects his relationship with everyone else. And it's a very, very small cast. There's only like 6 major characters in both the play and the film. So you've got...
So it's an ensemble piece.
It is an ensemble piece, but it's a very small ensemble piece. He's mostly the front and center of it. So like I said, you got Troy, played by Denzel Washington. He's the main guy. You got his wife, Rose, who's played by Viola Davis, who's actually his second wife. You've got his kid from a first marriage, Lyons, who is about 34 years old. You've got his current kid, who he had with Rose, whose name is Corey. You've got his best friend and co-worker, Jim Bono, who is constantly seen like accompanying him to and from work. And then you've got his brother, Uncle Gabe, who was a World War II veteran. The only problem is, when he was in war, he got a very bad injury, and he's got a metal plate in his head. So that makes him seem semi-retarded, but he's not retarded. He just can't function because he's got a metal plate in his head. So like I said, it's the way that the dialogue works in this film, and it's told back and forth, whereas there's really only one set, and it's their house. And that's really the only actual set in the entire film. But it's the fact of the matter is that they're telling these stories back and forth to each other. Not stories, but... I mean, well, yeah, it's stories, because they're relying on the dialogue to tell the story rather than the action. And like I said, any other situation, I would be sick of this, where it's like, okay, I get it, you're just talking and talking and talking, get to the action, let's see something rather than just being told it. Because one of the biggest things when it comes to film, to visual storytelling, is you're supposed to show, not tell.
Right.
But this case, it really, really worked. Now, I'll say that part of that is...
Would you say that's a testament to the writing?
Yeah, that's what I was actually going to get to, because this film, August Wilson wrote the screenplay in addition to the film. In addition to the play, and it is so well written. It is one of the best written things I have seen this entire year.
Have you seen the play or no?
I have not seen the play, no. But I have a feeling that there was not a lot that was lost in translation from the play to the film. And it really, really worked.
So being that this seems to be sort of a more abstract film adaptation, I want to ask you real quick, and I know you sort of briefly touched upon it, but just so the listeners can maybe be a little more enticed to go home and sort of watch this movie, what about this film worked for you?
For me, first off, the performances are what sold this film. Now, granted, like I said,
solid cast.
Yeah, very solid cast. Here's what I'll say, though. The reason why I thought these performances are some of the best of the year is when you're acting on stage for a live audience versus acting for a camera, there's a certain style of acting. It's more so performing rather than acting, because you know as well as I do, when you're in front of a live audience versus when you're just in front of a camera recording something for YouTube, your mind goes to a completely different place.
Right.
In terms of what it's
adrenaline, there's a different sort of there's a different sort of etiquette.
Exactly.
The way you present yourself.
Yeah.
Agreed. 100%.
Now, Denzel, Viola, and every single other one of these actors, they act like they're on stage, and it really, really works. Like, honestly, like Denzel.
That's cool.
Denzel is one of my top 10 favorite actors of all time, and this performance is one of the best performances I've seen from him in years. Like, I would say the last time I saw a performance from him this good on film, I would have to say is Malcolm X. I would definitely have to say is Malcolm X, because look, I love Training Day. That's a great performance.
Yeah, it's a great
I don't think it deserved the Oscar win, which that goes back to how outdated the Oscars are, but it was just a different level of acting. But it wasn't just him. It was Viola Davis. It was McKelty Williamson. It was Stephen McKinley Henderson. It was every single one of these actors brought a style and a level of acting that almost transcended some of the other performances that I've seen so far. Now, granted, some of the other performances that I've seen so far this year are absolutely incredible, but it's just, like I said, it's that mentality of acting for a live audience versus acting for the camera, and these guys were acting as if they were in front of a live audience, and it worked so well. Now, granted, it also helped that Denzel directed this film in addition to starring in it, and so
interesting.
And considering the fact that and he's been doing this play on Broadway for a couple years now.
Wow.
And yeah, so he's very used to
now,
it.
Is he known to sort of take a back scene approach, or is he more so just an actor and this is a rare occurrence?
No, because he's directed a couple of other films. He is more primarily an actor. He directed only 2 other films. This is only his 3rd film that he's directed, but
directed and starred in.
He's directed and starred in all of his films.
Oh wow, heavy workload. That's interesting to know, though.
Exactly, and just look, Denzel's one of those guys that he can churn out a piece of crap and he can still be great in it, and that's fine because everyone needs a paycheck because this is Hollywood and Hollywood's a business. But this film really to me was an example of the fact of Denzel still got it, but he's just reached a point in his career where he can really pick and choose when and where he can churn out an amazing film that with an amazing, incredible performance in it, rather than giving a pretty good performance because he's Denzel in an movie.
Right. So that brings me to my last point. My last point here. I would say that we did an excellent job throughout this podcast, sort of covering a few highlight movies that we had chosen,
right,
and sort of giving honestly, because I was unaware of the definition of the screenwriter
original
section.
Screenplay versus adapted screenplay.
Yeah, so that was really good. But I just wanted to ask you before we sort of conclude this.
Well,
we're running a
not
bit late.
not yet, because we gotta. I have a couple more films that I want to talk about, just like overall in terms of the year and what's going to get nominated. It's only like 2 or 3 more films.
Okay, we can do that real quick.
All right.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, like, what would your final few films be?
So another film that I wanted to talk about is a film that I know is going to get a lot of Oscar appeal. The only problem is that I personally didn't enjoy this film as much as a lot of other people did, and that's La La Land. So La La Land is a film that was directed by Damien Chazelle, the guy who gave us Whiplash a couple years ago, and that's a film that was one of my favorite films of that year. And like I said, when I make my top 10 films of the decade, I wouldn't be surprised if that's on there.
Whiplash or La La Land?
Whiplash.
Okay, right.
La La Land, for me, all the problems that I had with La La Land are problems that I could have had with Fences. So let me explain. So La La Land is the story of an up-and-coming jazz musician named Sebastian, played by Ryan Gosling, and an actress who's struggling to find work, who works mostly at a coffee shop, named Mia, played by Emma Stone. And it's a love story of them making their way through Hollywood, but for the most part, the film is an ode to classic Hollywood, because it's a musical. It has this gorgeous outset. It has these random song and dance numbers that people just break into song and dance, and it's very reminiscent of a 50s Hollywood film. And it works. Not for me, though. Because my problem with this film is that, whereas with Fences was a play... Yeah, Fences was a play that translated very well into film. La La Land was a film that would have been much better off as a play. What do I mean by that? I personally am not the biggest fan of musicals for film, because when it comes to musicals, when it comes to just using music in your film in general, it has to incorporate into your story in order to enhance it. So when people are just breaking into these random song and dance numbers out of nowhere, and it really doesn't contribute to your story, and then they just go back to regular, just have to, it doesn't really work for me. And that's really my main problem with this film, is that because I just didn't feel that they were focusing enough on their story, which is the story of these two people, and it's the dichotomy of following their dreams versus falling in love with each other, and how sometimes it doesn't always mean the same thing. And that story I really, really enjoyed. The problem was that every time they broke into a song and dance number, I just got taken out of the film. This film starts off with a song and dance number in the middle of the highway, which is so unrealistic. And I get that he's trying to make an ode, but at the same time, it's like, dude, focus on your story first. Stop trying to make a love letter to Hollywood. It's the same problem that I had with the Coen brothers. What they did with Hail Caesar earlier this year is the fact of he just gets too lost in trying to make, this love letter to a section of Hollywood's history that he doesn't really focus as much on his story. And I really don't like that. I really, really don't. Because
as opposed to the movie Grease, where all the songs sort of, in my opinion, add to the story,
right,
and give you more insight.
Exactly.
Did you feel that this movie could have been a better movie without the musical numbers?
Yeah, I really do, because every single time they went into a musical number, it just felt like it had nothing to do with the story. Like, to give you an example, there's this one scene, Gosling and Stone, the film starts off and they're just running into each other at random places over Hollywood before they finally start dating, and they see each other at a party, and they're just walking to their cars, like they're escorting to each other to their cars, and they're at the top of this road, like at this beautiful outlook of Hollywood, and the film is beautifully shot. It's shot in CinemaScope, and it's got this great blue and pink mix of lighting, and it's so colorful, and it looks gorgeous. But then they just all of a sudden put on these tap dancing shoes and start singing and dancing and tap dancing out of nowhere. And it's like, what does this have to do with your story? This has absolutely nothing to do with your story. You were walking her to her car, and now you're just going to start singing and dancing out of nowhere? It just detracted from the story, and it just felt so completely out of place. And that's honestly my biggest problem with this movie, because this film, I already know it. It's going to get, this film is going to win Best Picture. It really is. And it sucks because I don't think this is the best film of the year. This is not my personal favorite film of the year. This film didn't even make my favorite films of my top 15 of the year. And so everyone I've talked to has loved this film. everyone that I've talked to. And I saw it with my friend, and my one friend and I did not enjoy this film. Same with me. He enjoyed it a little bit more than I did. It's just, my overall problem with it, the reason I gave it a 6 out of 10, but my overall problem with it is not just that it's a love letter, it's that it feels like a play, but like a musical, like on stage. Like if this was a musical on stage, I would have enjoyed it so much better than as a film. But it's also the fact of tonally wise, it couldn't really decide what I wanted it to be, because this film was so cynical at parts, it was so over the top joyous at parts, and it was really gut-wrenchingly sad at parts, and they just never really meshed together. It just felt like...
Did it all just seem out of place, as if the notes they were touching on were just too drastically different from one another?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's really what it was. Because there's this one point where they're just like, so passionate and into it, and next thing you know, where they're just like kind of mopey, and you know they're arguing, and it doesn't really make sense for the way that the film flows.
Would you say that this falls into the sort of category that you mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, wherein that you feel that certain movies are made this time of the year strictly to scoop up a nomination or an award?
Most of the time, I would say yes, but for this particular instance, I'm gonna say no, because Damien Chazelle, this was a passion project for him, and
all right.
he's a jazz musician first. Like before he made Whiplash, which started off as a short. Whiplash was his first film that he did 2 years ago. This guy was a jazz musician. But the thing about Whiplash that worked is the way that he was able to incorporate music into the film in a way that accentuated the story and made it great. Versus this film, it just felt out of place. You know? So that's essentially my biggest gripes with La La Land is it feels like a play, and it doesn't feel like a great story to me, because it just felt like the story kept getting bogged down between the love letters, the constantly changing tones, and the just randomly breaking out into song and dance numbers that really had nothing to do with the film overall. That's why I don't enjoy La La Land as much as a lot of other people did.
All right. Well, would you be all right with maybe diving into like one more film and then?
Yeah, there's really one more film that I want to talk about that I've seen.
Great.
And then we can wrap this up, and we can
just so the listeners can have time to digest.
Exactly. Get ready for the award ceremonies.
And there will be an Oscar episode like we did for this week as well. So expect that the week before.
Right. So this film was a film to me that I hadn't heard a lot about until more so the end of the year.
Okay.
And that's Nocturnal Animals. Have you heard about this one?
I haven't heard about it, to be honest with you. I've heard about all these other ones, but I have not heard about this film.
This film is directed by Tom Ford, who is another guy who didn't necessarily start off with film. He's a fashion designer. And the film is the story of Amy Adams she's also a fashion designer. And
in real life or
No, her character.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Amy Adams stars in this, and she is like I said, she's a fashion designer, and she receives a manuscript from her ex-husband, who's played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and it's called Nocturnal Animals, and the manuscript that she receives from him. And then as she's reading the script, the story, it's a novel, we get to see the content of the novel played out in real life. So you get to see this fictional story being played out as if it's real life, and then it cuts back to her story. And then she has flashbacks of her previous life with her husband, how they met, how they ended up getting together, and why they ended up breaking up. And it's 3 different storylines, and they meld and blend so deeply into each other. It's such a convincing, compelling story, and that by the time they all come to an end, it's... I can't even come up with words for it. It's one of my favorite films of the year. I rank this as my 4th favorite film of the year.
Wow.
This is film that is
so they do an excellent job of tying everything in.
Yes.
So you think that this movie should win multiple awards? Do you think?
Here's what my predictions for what this film is getting nominated for. I think this film could potentially get nominated for Best Picture. It could. It depends on how many films they decide to do. If they decide to do 9 or if they decide to do 8 like they've been doing for the past couple of years. Okay. It all depends on that. So this film might not get Best Picture. I definitely think it's going to get Best Director and Best Adapted Screenplay, because this is an adapted screenplay for Tom Ford. And then I don't think this is going to get lead because I don't think Jake Gyllenhaal is going to get nominated because there's just too many other people that he's competing with. And I don't think Amy Adams is going to get nominated for this film. I do think she'll be nominated for Arrival, which I'll tell you my thoughts on that at another time because I do not like that film, whereas a lot of people do. My predictions are, in terms of acting, this film is going to get nominated for supporting actor for either one of 2 people. Michael Shannon or Aaron Taylor Johnson. Because let me tell you something. Aaron Taylor Johnson, you would know him better as Kick-Ass, gives the best damn performance I have ever seen from him.
Definitely a more serious role, huh?
He is so serious. He is terrifying. This is one of those performances from an actor that really just blends into the role so much so that you can't even tell him. Like, it's one of those performances that you watch it and you see him and you look at it, it's like, wait a minute, that's the guy who played Kick-Ass? And it's incredible. And like I said, I don't want to spoil anything because this story has so many different layers to it, and for me to tell the entire story, I would have to like break this down and analyze it, and we'd be here for another hour. So I'm not going to go into that. Yeah, so I'm not going to do that now, but what I will say is that if you get a chance to see this film, see it. You will not be disappointed. The ending, a lot of people have a problem with this ending. I think this ending was a beautiful ending, the way it wraps everything up, the way that both the fictional story and because the way that it works is that the fictional story that she's reading and the nonfiction story, the story of her, they're two completely separate stories, but the way they interlapse and the way that it's similar themes, and the way that she finally realizes what he's writing, and the way that he's writing about her, and he's writing about how she hurt him when she left him. It's flawless. It's some of the best, most innovative storytelling I've seen all year. And It is one of my favorite films of the year, hands down.
All right, so go and see this movie. Check out this movie.
Yeah, Nocturnal Animals is what it's called.
Dom seems to really like it, and I will say that his opinion has not led me wrong yet. So
that's good. Yeah, so basically, like I said, we're coming to a little bit to a close. So we're gonna wrap this up here. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm just going to wrap up by listing off my official predictions for the Oscars for all the big 9 categories.
I was actually gonna ask what are your predictions.
So I'm gonna wrap up by stating what my official predictions are for the Oscars, and then if you don't mind, I'm actually gonna tell you what my top 10 favorite films of the year are, and then we'll wrap. And then if you want, you can even tell me what your top 10 favorite films of the year are, and then we're gonna wrap this up. Sound good?
Sure. We can do that.
So here are my predictions. My predictions as of right now for the 89th Academy Awards nominees. So first, Best Picture. I picked 9 because I figured, one odd one, and then if they do 8, I'll just take that one off the list. So my 9 nominees for Best Picture are Arrival, Fences, Hacksaw Ridge, Hell or High Water, Jackie, La La Land, Manchester by the Sea, Moonlight, and Silence. Those are my nominees for Best Picture. And like I said, I didn't get a chance to go into some of those films in depth, and I haven't seen Silence yet. But once we do our official Oscars episode, I'll be able to break down some of those films that I wasn't able to here.
Fair enough. Yeah. Sounds good.
Then for Best Director, my predictions are Damien Chazelle for La La Land, Tom Ford for Nocturnal Animals, Barry Jenkins for Moonlight, Kenneth Lonergan for Manchester by the Sea, and Martin Scorsese for Silence.
All right.
Now for Best Actor. So this is one where it could go either way. Like, I've got my 5 here, and there's 1 or 2 people that I keep going back and forth, but these are my 5 as of right now for Best Actor, who's going to get nominated. Casey Affleck for Manchester by the Sea, who, like I said, is going to win, mark my words. Andrew Garfield, I think he'll be nominated for the Oscar for Silence, though, not Hacksaw Ridge.
All right, interesting.
Ryan Gosling for La La Land. Viggo Mortensen for Captain Fantastic, which is another film. It's a smaller indie film that I'll get into at a later date. And Denzel Washington for Fences. Those are my 5 for Best Actor. Then for Best Actress, my predictions are Amy Adams for Arrival, Annette Bening for 20th Century Women, Ruth Negga for Loving, Natalie Portman for Jackie, and Emma Stone for La La Land. For Supporting Actor, this is another one where I keep going back and forth, but my predictions for the 5 for Supporting Actor are Mahershala Ali for Moonlight, Jeff Bridges for Hell or High Water, Lucas Hedges for Manchester by the Sea, Dev Patel for Lion, and Michael Shannon for Nocturnal Animals. For Supporting Actress, my nominees are Viola Davis for Fences, Naomi Harris for Moonlight, Nicole Kidman for Lion, Octavia Spencer for Hidden Figures, and Michelle Williams for Manchester by the Sea. And then getting into that screenplay category, so my nominees for original screenplay are Captain Fantastic, written by Matt Ross, Hell or High Water, written by Taylor Sheridan, La La Land, written by Damien Chazelle, The Lobster, written by Efthimas Philippou and Yorgos Lanthimos, and Manchester by the Sea, written by Kenneth Lonergan. For adapted screenplay, my predictions are Arrival, written by Eric Heiserer, Fences, written by August Wilson, Lion, written by Luke Davies, Moonlight, written by Barry Jenkins and Terrell McCraney, and Nocturnal Animals for Tom Ford. And wrapping it up, you got my predictions for animated feature. My 5 that I think will be nominated for animated feature are Kubo and the Two Strings, My Life as a Zucchini, Moana, The Red Turtle, and Zootopia. Those are my official...
Red Turtle, that's Studio Ghibli, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Those are my official predictions for the 89th Academy Awards. I can't wait until the nominees are officially announced, and I can see if I'm right, how right I am. I have a feeling that I'm going to be right for most of these, but, there's always the occasional odd one that I'm not right about.
Well, I look forward to finding out, Dom. You did predict last year with DiCaprio. So
yeah, I did.
Lightning can strike
By
twice.
the way, a friend still owes me $20 for that because they were convinced that he was not going to win, that he was going to get screwed once again, and I'm like, I'm telling you, this is his year. And what do you know? I was right.
Calling him out on the podcast.
Pretty much. Lizzie, you still owe me Lizzie, you still owe me $20.
Jeez. All right. So I honestly wouldn't have a top 10. I'm just here to sort of observe and learn from you.
Right.
And just gotta say, it was very interesting podcast. I'm gotta go home and watch Sing Street.
Really
I
do.
think that's what I got the
You
most out of this
really
podcast because I do like the soundtrack, and now I think I need to see the emotions that movie had obviously played on you.
Right.
Come into my mind and my body, and I gotta feel that movie. So I think you've given me a lot to think about with this episode, as well as I'm sure for the listeners. And so really, what I have to say is just, for me, Dom is the guru. He is the movie nerd. So go with what he has to say and check out these movies. If you don't, then you like being bored. That's pretty much it.
I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. It's true. If you don't like watching these movies that I've recommended, you like being bored.
So give me your top 10 and let's close
All right,
this out.
so let's close this out. So my top 10 favorite films of the year as of right now. Like I said, I haven't seen Silence. There's a few more films I have to see, but as of right now, my top 10 favorite films of 2016 are, coming in number 10, War Dogs. Number 9, The Nice Guys. Number 8, Demolition. Number 7, Hell or High Water. Number 6, Sing Street. Number 5, Jackie. Number 4, Nocturnal Animals. Number 3, Manchester by the Sea. Number 2, Moonlight. And number 1 is Swiss Army Man, which is a film that we can definitely talk about at a later date because that is a weird film, but it is a crazy original inventive film. And that's another one that's just so heartwarming, such an innovative original story with some out of this world performances.
This was a bit of an abstract episode.
It really was.
There's so much to cover this time of the year in the world of movies and film. But
oh, yeah.
Expect more sort of one-on-one breakdowns like you got with our Rogue One episode and other episodes that will be uploaded after this.
Exactly.
And I will say this for the record. Dom said that list off the top of his head without looking at a piece of paper or off his phone. So if that isn't a compelling argument enough based off all of what this man has crafted for you with his sentences today and his thoughts and his very passionate reviews about these films, then you must like being bored. But I will say this. You don't have to be bored forever. Dom, where can they find you?
Oh, man, Chris, I couldn't think of a better way for you to knock me out. But just so you know, every main man needs his sidekick, his co-host, somebody to keep him going. And you've really done that for me.
I love being here, man.
That's good. I love hanging out with you. I love doing this. This is only
as your understudy.
Exactly. This is only our 3rd episode, and already I'm loving it. So, as for where you can find me on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at Movie Nerd Review. You can also go to my website, movienerdreviews.com, where I not only break down reviews, but I also go in depth with movie news, trailers, reactions. You can also go to any one of my 2 new YouTube channels, Movie Nerd Reviews, as well as Movie Nerd TV. I just uploaded my full breakdown for the 1st season of Westworld. Be sure to check that out.
And where did you upload the Rogue One podcast?
The Rogue One podcast is uploaded to my Movie Nerd Reviews YouTube channel. And also be sure to check that out on iTunes. We haven't opened up our feed yet, but once it's up and running, we will be sure to let you guys know. Chris, where can they find you at?
They can find me over at your podcast on your Movie Nerd Reviews channel. That's going to be a pretty current thing. We're going to try to do a weekly to every 10-day type segment, depending on scheduling. But you can also find me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anywhere you can type in Christian Ivanko. That's where you can find me. Check out my music, all my other fun little passion films and projects that I also like to do in my free time. And once again, thank you for listening. We appreciate it.
Voice of an angel this man has. If you have not heard his singing, be sure to check it out. And this is Chris. I'm Dom. This has been the Movie Nerd Podcast. We love you guys. We'll see you next time.